buenos días, buen día a todas y a todos. Qué alegría tener a tantas personas por aquí y quiero daros las gracias por haber decidido dedicar un tiempecito esta mañana de sábado a este Videoforum. Bueno, me presento muy brevemente, soy Sergio de Movemos Europa, un movimiento independiente y transfronterizo que busca impulsar el poder de la ciudadanía para hacer de Europa un hogar de acogida más democrático, verde y feminista. Deciros que en nuestra búsqueda de creación de alianzas hemos sido promotoras junto con Extinction Rebellion de Marea Deliberativa, que es una plataforma compuesta por más de 40 organizaciones y personas independientes, ya todas las que estéis aquí, espero que os sintáis parte y que queráis participar el día de mañana, que buscamos abrir la democracia e impulsar críticamente la Asamblea Ciudadana para el Clima del Gobierno de España, que ahora mismo, por cierto, con mucha opacidad y probablemente muchas de vosotras no lo sepáis, pero está celebrando ahora mismo su primera sesión. Aprovecho también para dar las gracias y presentar a las compañeras de Marea Deliberativa que nos acompañan y que intervendrán a lo largo del Videoforum. Empiezo por Miguel de Igualdad por Sorteo, pero también por Verónica, por Vero, por Jorge de Extinction Rebellion y por Mari, que va a ser nuestra intérprete. Y por supuesto también a Miquel, que está haciendo toda la parte logística. Y también deciros que podéis compartir vuestras ideas en Twitter o por cualquier otra red social con el hashtag Poder en la Gente, todo juntito. Nada, deciros que hoy queremos dar respuesta a la pregunta ¿puede salvarnos la democracia de la crisis climática? Para ello vamos a ver varios vídeos y vamos a visionar gran parte, no lo vamos a ver entero porque de lo contrario no va a dar luego tiempo para las preguntas y para que sea mínimamente participativo, pero sí vamos a ver el 90% del documental de Picture Zero, la gente contra el cambio climático. Y al final, como sabéis, tendremos la oportunidad de escuchar y hacer preguntas a Stephen Smith, que fue productor del documental. Entonces, como no tenemos mucho tiempo, voy a comenzar lanzándole la pregunta a nuestro compañero Miguel. Así que, Miguel, respóndenos un poquito. ¿Puede salvarnos la democracia de la crisis climática? Adelante.
Bueno, la respuesta es ¿qué democracia puede salvarnos de la crisis climática? Justo ayer, Biden clausuraba su cumbre por la democracia, en la que te daban a hablar de los éxitos y los fracasos de la democracia occidental. Y a la vez China, que no haya sido invitada, decía que ellos tenían una democracia mejor, la democracia consultiva, en la que no hay elecciones, pero ellos consultaban a la voz de la gente y la representaban. Pero la realidad es que hay otras visiones de lo que es la democracia, de lo que era la democracia original, y ahora tenemos un vídeo de los compañeros de Maps sobre este tema que creo que va a ser muy interesante y revelador para todos. Así que vamos a preguntarnos qué es la democracia y si lo que todos pensamos de votar cada 4 años es la democracia.
Hablemos de democracia. Estos son los países cuyos gobiernos dicen ser democráticos. Estados Unidos, Francia, Reino Unido, Alemania, México, China, Turquía, Sudán, Rusia, Suecia, Sierra Leona, Australia, España, Polonia, Brasil, Surinam, Guyana, Venezuela. Joder, todos somos democracias. Qué bien, ¿no? Vamos a intentarlo de otra manera. Esto es 1984, una novela de ciencia ficción de George Orwell. En ella, un gobierno elimina palabras para controlarnos. Imagina que eliminas del diccionario palabras como guerra, violencia, asesinar y cosas así, pero dejas paz. Cuando en un país no hay paz, ¿qué dirás? No puedes decir que hay guerra, esa palabra no existe. Acabaríamos diciendo que hay menos paz. Llamaríamos al problema con el nombre de la solución. Una auténtica locura. ¿Y si nos está pasando algo parecido?
¿Qué haces?
Pues un vídeo como...
¿Un vídeo como el de Siria?
Pues sí, bueno, os presento a mi padre.
¿Me puedo quedar a mirar? ¿Quieres que te ayude?
Sí, venga. ¿Cuál dirías que es nuestra forma de gobierno?
Pues la democracia.
Vale, vivimos en democracia. ¿Por qué?
Pues porque hay elecciones, que es algo que nos costó mucho conseguir.
Vale, las elecciones son una conquista
¿Del pueblo?
Vale, del pueblo. ¿Y a quiénes elegimos?
Hombre, a los políticos más preparados.
Vale, o sea que los políticos son gente preparada.
Sí, y si no te gusta lo que han hecho, les echas. El pueblo manda.
Vale, o sea que el poder está en los ciudadanos.
Sí, bueno, a ver, aquí no puede mandar todo Cristo, si no sería una locura.
No se puede dar el poder al pueblo porque sería una locura. Un poco contradicción, ¿no?
Hombre, sí, pero para eso están los partidos.
Vale, los partidos.
Sí, si les votas habiendo leído el programa electoral.
Vale, o sea que el programa electoral es muy importante. ¿Y te fías de que lo van a cumplir?
Hombre, no mucho. Pero es que todo el mundo desconfía de los políticos. Sí, apunta eso también.
Vale, ¿y de dónde viene la democracia?
Pues de los romanos, bueno, no, de los griegos, sí, de Atenas. Ahora que a ti que te gustan los mapas...
Bueno, pero nuestro sistema de gobierno no viene de Grecia.
Sí, pero Grecia es...
El poder puede ser visualizado como una pirámide. Arriba están los que pueden hacer las leyes, los que mandan, vaya. Abajo los que obedecen. Y así era muy básicamente como nos organizábamos hace 200 años. Este señor era el rey. Ya sabes que ser rey se hereda. Y solo podían ser reyes sus hijos. El resto de la gente estaba aquí. En Francia, para que no fuera tan visible que ellos tenían todo el poder, los reyes consultaban de vez en cuando a una asamblea donde estaban los nobles, la iglesia, y de todo este resto que quedaba, se eligió a la gente con profesiones prestigiosas, abogados, comerciantes, los burgueses. A los burgueses les había volado la cabeza un libro, El contrato social, de Rousseau. Rousseau dijo que todos debemos participar en hacer las leyes. De lo contrario, no son leyes. Así que lo que hacían los reyes no eran leyes. ¿Cómo lo solucionaron? Quitando al rey. Ahora, ¿quién haría las leyes? Rousseau dice que para que una ley sea ley, todos debemos participar en hacerla. Pero hay varias maneras de que todos participemos. Una de ellas es que elijamos a representantes. No haremos las leyes nosotros, pero nos consultarán y nos pedirán permiso para aprobarlas. Perfecto. Los de abajo han dicho que sí. Ahora esto es una ley. Las repúblicas que nacieron por aquel entonces, como la República Francesa y los Estados Unidos, optaron por esta vía y se llamaron a sí mismas repúblicas de gobierno representativo. ¿Y quién podía elegir a los representantes? Solo los considerados libres, hombres, mayores de 25 años e independientes económicamente, gente con dinero y propiedades, mayoritariamente burgueses. Resultado, los que eligen y los elegidos son del mismo grupo. Así que la elección no es una conquista del pueblo, es una conquista de un grupo, de una élite. Espera, rebobinemos. Antes de la Revolución Francesa, el rey ya creó elecciones para que el pueblo eligiera representantes y no tener que negociar con millones de personas. ¿Te acuerdas de quiénes representaban al pueblo? Abogados, comerciantes, los burgueses. Exacto, los famosos burgueses. Así que los burgueses ni siquiera conquistan las elecciones, mantienen un método que ya habían usado algunos reyes. Era bastante obvio que un grupo había hecho la revolución para ellos solos. Tocqueville, el primero en estudiar la joven república norteamericana, dijo: no le temo al sufragio, la gente votará lo que se le diga. ¿Por qué? Porque si tienes que elegir entre varias opciones, quien tenga más dinero hará tan visibles las suyas que las convertirá en las únicas. Mientras, la gente empezó a exigir que pudiera votar todo el mundo, así que más y más gente empezó a acceder a la posibilidad de votar, el famoso sufragio universal. Pero tan centrados en obtener el voto, la gente se había olvidado de una cosa. Rousseau había advertido algo sobre los representantes. Para que una ley sea ley, todos debemos participar en hacerla. Si no la hacemos todos y elegimos representantes para que la hagan, necesitamos mecanismos para que nos hagan caso. Por ejemplo, poder parar en todo momento una ley que no nos guste. Si no creamos esos mecanismos, no tenemos el poder. No hemos elegido representantes, sino jefes. Y se puso muy pesado con esto. Así que, de acuerdo con Rousseau, no. Hoy el poder no está en los ciudadanos, está en los representantes. ¿Y cuál es el efecto de no tener mecanismos para que nos hagan caso? Pueden hacer lo que quieran. No importa lo mucho que desconfiemos de los políticos. La elección significa confianza total. Pero no nos apresuremos. Volvamos a cuando todavía votaban unos pocos. Entonces, los representantes eran conocidos personalmente por los cientos de personas que les votaban. Pero según más y más gente accede a votar, resulta difícil que todos conozcan personalmente al representante. Entonces aparecen los partidos de masas, que clasificaban a la gente por ideologías. No importa la persona, conoce sus ideas. Aquí nacen los programas electorales, paquetes de promesas que hacen los partidos. Sin embargo, acuérdate de cómo está hecho el sistema. Por mucha vivienda que te haya prometido, no hay mecanismos para que el representante que elegiste te haga caso. El único mecanismo es votar a otro, pero eso tampoco te da ninguna garantía. Entonces, ¿cómo de importantes son los programas? Nada, los programas electorales no tienen importancia. Y espera, no hemos hablado de cómo funciona un partido, otra pirámide. Si quieres llegar a ser un representante, tendrás que ir escalando en la pirámide de poder. ¿Cómo se hace? No siempre como uno espera. Primero, diciendo que sí a todo. Luego, alianzas. Alianzas que luego puedes romper con alguna puñalada. Y cuando seas alguien, juega tus cartas de promesa. Diles que te acordarás de ellos cuando llegues arriba. Vale, ¿quiénes suelen llegar a la cima? Los más grises, la gente que está de acuerdo con todo el mundo. Los partidos son una máquina de seleccionar mediocres. Ahora, de estos tres, vamos a quedarnos con este. ¿Es el mejor para gobernar? No, el mejor para gobernar era este, pero se pondría nervioso en los debates. El segundo mejor era este, pero es demasiado viejo y hay que ganar voto joven. Nos hemos quedado con este no porque sea el mejor para gobernar, sino porque es el mejor para ganar elecciones. Pero es un inútil. Así que, ¿son gente preparada los políticos? No, no es necesario estar preparado, y suele reinar la mediocridad. Ahora veamos qué pasa en la parte alta de la pirámide, donde se reúnen los representantes. Fíjate, el Parlamento se diseñó para ser un lugar donde se deliberaba. Ante opiniones diferentes, se trataba de convencer a los demás y se estaba abierto a ser convencido, para llegar a un acuerdo. Pero con la llegada de los partidos de masas, se convierte en un simple medidor de poder. Cuantos más votantes tienes, más fácil resulta imponer tus ideas. Hoy día, los partidos han perdido gran parte de su militancia. La sociedad se compone de una mayoría no militante, que no es de ningún partido, y las minorías que siguen en ellos. Atraer a esta mayoría es la clave, así que se la estudia y se va cambiando el comportamiento del partido para atraer votantes, e incluso fabricando candidatos. Los partidos no solo tienen que atraer votantes, también tienen que evitar que te acerques al resto de partidos. ¿A alguien le apetece ser un fascista o un rojo de mierda? Pues solo puedes estar en uno de los dos extremos. A esto también se le llama polarizar. Hemos dividido a la sociedad en polos opuestos. Vivimos en democracia. Ahora quiero que prestes mucha atención. ¿Y si te digo que estamos llamando democracia a algo que no lo es? Si te fijas, desde el inicio del vídeo no hemos mencionado la democracia en ningún momento. No ha hecho falta porque nuestros gobiernos, cuando nacieron hace 200 años, no se llamaban democracias. Se llamaban repúblicas de gobierno representativo. Exacto, repúblicas de gobierno representativo. Podríamos pensar que quizá el término democracia no se usaba entonces, o no se conocía. Vamos a buscarlo. John Adams, presidente de Estados Unidos, uno de sus padres fundadores. La democracia degenera en anarquía. La democracia nunca dura. James Madison, cuarto presidente de Estados Unidos, otro de esos fundadores. La democracia es incompatible con la seguridad personal y la propiedad privada. Sí que se conocía. En Estados Unidos, el gobierno representativo más antiguo, sus fundadores hablaban de la democracia. Decían que era algo negativo y opuesto a lo que crearon. Lo puedes buscar. La palabra democracia no se menciona ni una sola vez en la Constitución que redactaron, ni en la Constitución de la Revolución Francesa, una de las primeras constituciones de la era moderna. Atenas está aquí. Lleva ahí 5.000 años. 500 años antes del nacimiento de Cristo, era una ciudad-estado de 300.000 habitantes. Una Nueva York de la época. Es un momento interesante porque se parece al momento en que nacieron nuestros gobiernos. Al igual que en la Revolución Francesa, estaban cansados de reyes y de que el poder se heredara. Y pensaban que el poder debían tenerlo los ciudadanos. No parece muy distinto al origen de nuestros gobiernos, como digo. Además, también elegían representantes, en una votación abierta a todos los ciudadanos. No tenías que tener ciertas riquezas para participar. Ojo, aquí empiezan las diferencias. Los atenienses se dieron cuenta también de que la elección significaba confiar en los elegidos y que eso podía llevar a un "si confías en mí, déjame hacer". ¿Qué hicieron? En lugar de confiar, decidieron desconfiar, darle la vuelta a todo el sistema. Ahora, cualquier decisión que quisieran tomar los representantes, imagina que quieren aprobar esta ley, tenía que ser consultada a los ciudadanos en una asamblea a la que podían ir todos, hasta el más pobre. Aristóteles, que era crítico con la democracia, decía de ella que era el gobierno del pobre sobre el rico. Y recuerda, el poder lo visualizamos de arriba a abajo. Ahora el poder está aquí. Esta gente ya no son representantes, porque cada ciudadano puede ir a la asamblea y se representa a sí mismo. Ellos son solo cargos. La misma palabra lo indica. Llevan una carga. Ahora sí se puede decir que el poder estaba en los ciudadanos. Aún así, mira qué putos genios. Dijeron, esta parte no nos parece democracia, porque si eliges a alguien, seguro que hace cosas sin consultarte. ¿Cómo podemos evitar que los cargos nos digan, tú me has elegido, has confiado, ahora yo decido? No eligiéndolos. Así que la mayoría de los cargos no eran elegidos, eran seleccionados mediante sorteo. Es una genialidad. Si querías desempeñar un cargo, te presentabas candidato. Y entre todos los candidatos se sorteaba el cargo. ¿Para qué servía esto? Estas personas no podían decir, el pueblo me ha elegido, yo decido en su nombre. No, no te ha elegido nadie. Nadie te ha dicho que puedas decidir en su nombre. Estás abajo de la pirámide. Tu trabajo es proponer cosas que deben aprobar los de arriba. Y ojo, los ciudadanos también pueden proponer cosas cuando quieran. No te olvides, el centro del poder está arriba, en la Asamblea. Sabiendo que elegir implica confiar, los atenienses decidieron usar otro sistema, actuar con desconfianza. Y sí, ellos también pensaban, coño, ¿y si nos sale un inútil? Así que para ser candidato, tenías que pasar un examen. Este tiene multas sin pagar, este tiene denuncias. Ahora sí, los políticos eran gente preparada. Fíjate en otro problema que se resuelve con este sistema, los programas de nuestros partidos políticos. No existían, no servía de nada prometer, dado que tus promesas no influían nada en que salieras seleccionado o no. ¿Programa electoral? Nah, mejor hacemos que no se pueda prometer. Y si salías seleccionado y hacías algo diferente a lo aprobado por la Asamblea, te podía caer la de Dios. Hasta te podían matar. Aquí nos andaban con mierdas. Sí, sé lo que estás pensando. Qué puto estrés ser político. No puedes prometer nada, no puedes hacer nada para lo que no te den permiso. No, es una putada. Y encima los sueldos no eran la hostia que digamos. Aún así, se calcula que cada uno de estos ciudadanos desempeñaba un cargo al menos una vez en la vida. ¿Por qué se presentaba la gente? Porque este sistema solo funciona si participas. A diferencia del nuestro, que solo funciona si cedemos el poder en las elecciones. A esto, los atenienses lo llamaban democracia. Como hemos visto, el poder está en los ciudadanos de la Asamblea, no en los pocos cargos seleccionados por elección, ni en la mayoría seleccionados por sorteo. Nos preguntamos si es un descontrol darle el poder al pueblo. La respuesta es la historia. Atenas fue la ciudad de su tiempo. Escribió obras increíbles, ganó guerras. Cuando veas películas sobre Grecia, cuando compartas fotos en Facebook de sus monumentos, cuando estudies a gente que vivió allí, piénsalo. En Atenas, las decisiones las tomaba la gente corriente y duró 200 años. ¿Te parece poco? Pues es exactamente lo mismo que llevan nuestros gobiernos, que nacen hace 200 años con la Revolución Francesa. Dar el poder a los ciudadanos no es una locura, funciona. La Asamblea sí que es una conquista del pueblo. ¿Quieres más cosas increíbles? Acuérdate de la polarización. Los partidos necesitan que odies al contrario. Nada de lo que dice el otro es bueno. Son ellos o el fuego. En Atenas no había partidos, solo personas, de modo que estabas más dispuesto a aceptar la opinión de otro. El resultado, en la Asamblea se debatía no para ganar, sino para encontrar juntos la mejor idea. Además, piensa en la gente corriente. Si puedes controlar a los cargos políticos y tu opinión cuenta, ¿qué ocurrirá? Querrás hacer política, querrás ir a la Asamblea. Como te he dicho, estaba siempre llena. Muchos piensan que la gente pasa de la política y que por eso, ¿para qué darle más poder? Es al revés. Si tenemos el poder de cambiar cosas, tendremos ganas de hacer política. ¿Qué conseguía el sistema ateniense? La igualdad política. Ahora no hay distintos tipos de ciudadanos, gente que elige, partidos, representantes que toman decisiones. No, solo hay ciudadanos. Y los ciudadanos tienen el poder. No, estos no tienen poder. Recuerda, son solo cargos. El gobierno representativo crea una diferencia entre personas, los que ceden el poder y los que tienen el poder, y no da ningún medio de controlar a estos. Es fácil ver por qué los que crearon nuestros gobiernos representativos decían que la democracia era algo opuesto. Es que lo es lo contrario. Poder en los representantes frente al poder en los ciudadanos. Dar confianza ciega frente a desconfiar totalmente. Promesas que no se cumplen frente a un sistema donde es imposible hacer promesas. Gente mediocre frente a gente preparada. Es verdad, no vivimos en una democracia. ¿Pero para qué decirlo? Porque solo cuando sabemos que esto se llama guerra, podemos decir, Queremos paz. Si vivimos en gobiernos representativos, ¿queremos democracias?
Pues muchas gracias, Sergio, por esta magnífica edición de los vídeos. Los vídeos son dos, son un poco más largos. Sergio ha seleccionado las partes más importantes y creo que ha estado genial. Espero que os haya gustado. Y ante la pregunta, ¿queremos democracias? Pues hay un dato muy curioso que se compartió hace poco. Una encuesta que preguntaba si la gente pensaba que el sistema necesitaba ser actual, necesitaba ser completamente reformado, necesitaba cambios mayores, cambios menores o no necesitaba ser cambiado. España, de esa encuesta, fue el país en el que más pensaba la gente que el sistema necesitaba ser completamente reformado. Un 54% de la gente lo dijo. Un 32% dijo que necesitaba cambios mayores. Y solo un 2% dijo que no necesitaba cambio ninguno. Así que un 86% de los encuestados pensaban que hacía falta un cambio importante en este sistema. Y tal vez muchos no sepan hacia dónde, tal vez no sepan hacia qué. Pero desde Igualdad por Sorteo, y creo que muchos de los que estamos aquí, sí pensamos que la democracia original, donde había igualdad política y donde se ejercía el sorteo y la participación de los ciudadanos, eso sí puede ayudarnos a sobrepasar la crisis climática y otros muchos problemas que tenemos a día de hoy. Aunque no vivamos en una democracia como tal, sí que hay elementos de los que se ha hablado en el vídeo que se han incorporado o que han ocurrido en la historia. Aparte del ejemplo de Atenas, en las ciudades como una de Italia, por ejemplo, se utilizaba el sorteo para luchar contra la corrupción. Pero cuando hay sorteo no puedes regalarle el cargo a tu amigo. Y en tiempos modernos se ha utilizado mucho el sorteo para las asambleas ciudadanas, como por ejemplo las más famosas tal vez, las de Irlanda, donde se hicieron asambleas ciudadanas para que hubiese debates públicos en el que ciudadanos sorteados al azar discutiesen sobre el tema del aborto y el matrimonio gay, que en la Irlanda católica eran temas muy polémicos. Y como los partidos solamente generaban división entre la población, estos ciudadanos sorteados sí hablaron entre ellos, sí que alcanzaron algún tipo de consenso y después hubo un referéndum en el que la gente no fue a votar sintiendo voy a ganar o voy a perder, sino que se sintió que se había alcanzado un consenso para toda la población. Así que con esto, centrándonos en la Asamblea Ciudadana como una aplicación del sorteo y de la igualdad política, le paso el turno a Vero, que nos va a hablar de las asambleas ciudadanas, que es un elemento que sí que hemos mantenido o que estamos empezando a incorporar de la democracia ateniense original. Todo tuyo, Vero.
Vale, muchas gracias, Miguel. Os voy a compartir una presentación para que sea un poco más sencillo. Vale. Aquí, ahí va. Vale. Pues, ¿qué es una asamblea ciudadana? Una asamblea ciudadana al final es una herramienta de la democracia, es una herramienta de deliberación y de toma de decisiones. Llevamos ya más de 25 años de experiencia de asambleas ciudadanas y, como ha dicho Miguel, pues se han celebrado, por ejemplo, en Irlanda, se han celebrado también en Francia, en Reino Unido, en Suecia. Y bueno, ahora a nivel estatal se ha propuesto algo a lo que llaman asamblea ciudadana, pero que no cumple los requisitos para serlo, ¿no? Y estas nuevas asambleas ciudadanas, muchas de ellas han empezado a incorporar el tema de cambio climático como tema sobre el que hablar. Vale, como hemos dicho, es un ejercicio de democracia deliberativa y quienes participan en ese ejercicio de democracia son un grupo que es representativo de la realidad social. Al final puede ser una realidad social a nivel país o a nivel comunidad autónoma, a nivel municipio, ¿no? Pueden ser de diferentes escalas, diferentes tamaños. Vale. Entonces, las personas son elegidas por sorteo, como hemos visto en el vídeo en el que nos hablaban de democracia. Aquí hablamos, por ejemplo, de como los jurados de los tribunales, ¿no? Esos tribunales populares que aparecen esos jurados populares que aparecen en las películas en Estados Unidos, que son personas de la calle las que participan para tomar esas decisiones. Vale, el caso es que el sorteo de la Asamblea Ciudadana es un poco diferente a ese tipo de sorteos. Porque queremos que realmente... Espera, voy a quitar un poquito esto para aquí. Queremos que realmente sea un sorteo, sean representativos de la sociedad, entonces para eso lo que se hace es, digamos, que se analiza las características de la sociedad en la que se va a realizar la asamblea, Se ven, por ejemplo, pues, los rangos de edad y la proporción de edad que hay en cada rango, la proporción de género, la renta, el nivel educativo, la procedencia geográfica, ¿no? Y una vez que tenemos esas características, ahí sí realizamos el sorteo, ¿no? Es un sorteo estratificado, es decir, queremos que el grupo que sea representativo de la sociedad, de verdad sea representativo con todas las características que tiene esa sociedad. Vale, bien. Y entonces, hasta ahora hemos estado, digamos, hablando de la fase previa, como si dijéramos, de la preparación de la asamblea. Y de esa preparación de la asamblea, por un lado, se va a elegir por ese sistema las personas que van a participar en la asamblea, pero también se va a definir una pregunta. Se va a definir una pregunta a la que las personas que participan en la asamblea van a tener que dar respuesta. Y para poder dar respuesta a esa pregunta hay diferentes fases. Vale, la fase 1 sería la fase de información. Es decir, se da formación por parte de personal experto, ¿no? Sobre un tema concreto. En este caso sería el tema de cambio climático. Y, por supuesto, es un personal experto independiente. Esa formación, lo ideal es que no solo sea para la gente que pertenece a la asamblea, sino para toda la ciudadanía. Para eso lo ideal sería que esa formación estuviese abierta, saliese en los medios de comunicación y fuese accesible a todo el mundo. Para que no solo la persona a la que le ha tocado por sorteo pueda recibirlo, ¿no? Sino que realmente vaya más allá esa asamblea. Y además, si la gente recibe esa formación, también podría aportar ideas a esa asamblea, ¿no? Vale, entonces hemos hablado de la fase 1, información, luego pasaríamos a la fase 2, deliberación. Tendríamos en esa fase 2, una vez que tenemos la formación previa, lo que vamos a hacer es debatir para poder elaborar propuestas. Vale, vamos a debatir sobre temas concretos, ¿no? Temas de alimentación, transporte, energía, temas que tengan que ver, en este caso, con cambio climático. Y para que esos debates funcionen y todas las personas puedan dar su opinión y vayan en un proceso adecuado, pues va a haber un grupo de mediación que va a ayudar a esos debates, ¿no? Vale, perdón, se me acaba de ir. Vale, aquí. Vale, entonces hemos hecho la fase 1, la fase 2, deliberación, y la fase 3 ya sería la última fase, que sería la fase en la que ya se va a votar. En esa fase 2 de debate se han realizado unas propuestas y en esta fase 3 se van a votar esas propuestas para ver qué nivel de acuerdo hay entre las personas, ¿no? que forman parte. Y una vez que se tiene ese nivel de acuerdo, ya hemos dado respuesta a esa pregunta. Al ser una única pregunta, ¿no? Nos podría parecer que pues va a haber poca respuesta, ¿no? Va a haber pocas medidas, pero por ejemplo en la Asamblea Ciudadana francesa, que fue una asamblea climática que en cuanto a proceso fue bastante interesante, cómo se hizo bastante bien, se llegaron a casi 150 resoluciones, ¿no? O sea, no, a pesar de ser una única pregunta, puede haber muchísimas medidas al respecto. Y después, bueno, aquí se acabaría el proceso de la asamblea, pero podríamos hablar de una fase 4, que sería la fase en la que se implementarían esas medidas, que se vería qué medidas son las que se han aprobado por mayor porcentaje en el voto, y entonces esas medidas serían las que habría que implementar para dar solución a esa pregunta. Vale, y entonces ahora creo que dejo de compartir pantalla aquí. Ahora ya me he perdido. Aquí, perdón. Vale, dejo de compartir pantalla, vale. Y ahora vamos a aprovechar, para quienes queráis, ponéis la cámara y nos vamos a sacar una foto de quienes hemos participado de quienes estamos participando en esto. Ahora enseguida ponemos el vídeo, ¿eh? Pero si queréis mirar la cámara para la foto. Y quien esté sacando la foto que avise cuando esté. Vale, ¿estamos? Vale, perfecto. Pues gracias, Miquel. Bueno, pues entonces ahora ya vamos a poner el vídeo. Como ha comentado Sergio, no va a estar completo, pero prácticamente va a salir todo el vídeo. Y nada, espero que lo disfrutéis y ahí sí que vais a ver un poquito más del tema de asambleas ciudadanas. Y un placer. Hasta luego, luego nos vemos.
What do I know about climate change? Not a lot. This is my little bar. I had a spare shed, so I thought, what should we do with it? Turn it into a bar. And unfortunately, we had a bit of a sesh last night. Normally it's the shots, you know, like the tequilas and the Jaegers, and yeah, it's got to be done, isn't it? You're gonna have a drink, you're gonna do a few shots.
It's January 2020 and preparations are being made to form the first ever UK-wide Citizens' Assembly on climate change. The people with the responsibility of making some momentous decisions have been chosen at random to reflect the UK population.
When I opened the envelope and read the information, I thought it might have been a hoax, because I thought, who's going to write to me from the House of Commons? I'm just like a normal person, I don't know anything, do you know what I mean? So there's going to be an awful lot of people that think, you know, why the hell is she going to do it?
I'm not particularly worried about climate change. At my age, don't really have to be. I'd like to see it proved. How much is just naturally the Earth warming up against what we're doing to it?
I feel about people who don't believe that I can change their mind from sheer nagging, like I have to my husband. That needs to be recycled. That could be. That as well. That needs to be recycled. All of it recyclable.
Yeah, there could be a few rows, I think. As one not known for backing away from rows.
My dad watches the news all day, every day. I avoid the news because there's always something you don't want to hear. And yeah, that might be living in denial and being ignorant, but sometimes ignorance is bliss. It really is.
More than 100 people from all over Britain are in Birmingham today for the first Citizens' Assembly on climate change.
I'm 27. I've been a mother for nearly 11 years, but the furthest I've ever been on my own is Leeds. I'm a bit nervous because I don't want to miss my trains, but I know that I'll be fine. I'll be fine.
From all corners of the UK, the Assembly members are travelling to Birmingham for what will be the start of a 3-month process.
The crucial question that they're thrashing out is just how to get to net zero emissions by 2050.
Given the level of global expertise on this question, what can they really learn from members of the public who don't have that?
Over 4 weekends, they must decide what Britain should do to avert the climate crisis.
I don't really know what to expect yet, to be honest, but I'm just hoping that there's people there like me.
In a Citizens' Assembly, you're not just bringing together people who are really passionate or committed to the subject at all. You're bringing together a perfect sample of the country as a whole, people who might never have thought about the issue that you're about to discuss. So it really is the country in miniature.
What have you got there, Amanda? Skinny Prosecco. Keeps you nice and slim, so I'm not going to put any weight. Never know, might offer you a glass if you're lucky.
The Assembly members finally meet each other.
I'm Amanda from Kent, and I'm 27.
And are facing a packed schedule.
The net zero date is 2050 at the latest, and that sounds like a long time away, but it's not, because actually the decisions that we make in the next few years really will determine whether we reach net zero. It's a huge step, and we need to put the plans in place now.
So this weekend is going to be about introducing you to climate change in a thorough way and some of the overarching ethical and practical questions.
They have to decide how Britain gets to net zero emissions, meaning we all but eliminate our production of harmful greenhouse gases. Their decisions could spell huge changes to how we all live our lives. But first, they need a crash course in climate change science.
We have thermometer measurements covering the planet, and so we've warmed the planet by about 1.1 degrees so far. That has very severe consequences. We have satellite measurements over the Arctic, and we've watched the sea ice slowly decline. We've lost about 40%. We're also seeing melting of Greenland, for example. And so Greenland is losing water at a rate of 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools every single second. That's a loss of water entering the ocean. How about closer to home? So someone has measured the temperature every single day in Oxford since 1814. The blue years are the cold years, red years are hot years. And again, we can see the pattern of our warming climate even at the scale of a single thermometer based in one town in the UK. Climate change is here and now. Thank you.
In between listening to the experts, delegates are given time to discuss what they've heard.
You agree? Don't agree?
I don't know. Must admit to a selfish interest in this that the thing about sea level rising, it's only going to be 1 metre in the next century. This is rather a personal interest because I've got a house that looks out on the sea. So 1 metre in 100 years, I don't see as devastating.
Well, Bangladesh's average height above sea level is average a metre. So you quite literally would be flooding an entire country. Yeah.
It's been enlightening because everybody talks about climate change, but do people really know what it actually means?
So can you explain it to me?
Oh, God. Not really, no. But in the layman's terms, we're warming up.
At the end of the first day, a special guest has been invited to address the Assembly.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear him speak, because obviously that voice, everybody wants to hear that voice, right?
I've just been working all day on a series called A Perfect Planet.
Ladies and gentlemen, secure the camera.
The first thing I want to say is that the question we're facing is of the utmost importance, and the rest of the people in this country ought to be extremely grateful to you, as indeed am I.
What is the most extreme example of climate change you have seen yourself during your travels all over the world?
I have no doubt at all what it is. One of the most magical moments of my life, and I measure my words, the first time I put on a mask and dived on a coral reef. To start with, it's magical. There are 50, 100, 150 different creatures of all the colors you can imagine, all the shapes you can imagine, and I was blown away. And then I dived very close to just where I had that first experience, which is in Northern Australia. And instead of a reef, instead of a coral reef with all those richnesses and all that color and all that variety and all that beauty, it was white. And you thought perhaps it had a strange beauty. And then you realized the white was the whiteness of a cemetery. There was not a spark of life left. And it went for miles. That was the time when I realized that human beings were capable of destroying the natural world, and they were going on doing it, and they're still going on doing it.
Very emotional. I was at times that close to actually crying because the way he describes things. Sorry, I'm getting all cheery up now. I'll think about it. But when he describes how fantastic the things are that he's seen and how we're ruining it, and we need the, it just, sorry, hang on.
Thank you very much.
The second one is taxes that increase as people fly more often. So an example of that is the frequent flyer levy.
So a frequent flyer levy is where you would have low or zero tax for one flight per person each year, and then it would just keep going up for each extra flight that you take after that point. That shifts the rise in tax burden onto those who fly the most.
What
did you think of that?
Frequent flyer levy.
Like a frequent flyer levy beyond that. So everyone has,
I agree with
there
you.
is some limit.
There's choice.
Well, exactly, because when 15% of the people travelling are causing 75% of the overall travel, that would make the frequent flyer levy mean that those 15% would be paying more than everybody else.
I don't think that's unfair. I think we've got to do something.
This would be a nightmare to administer.
Yeah.
Why? See, I'm against just taxing because you can. It's going to limit
what
people.
What would your solution be then? You just think, that's not a good idea, that's not a good idea. You don't like either of those.
I'm just anti-tax.
It's only the people that are going to be flying that are going to be taxed more.
It's just
they get it,
big government all the time.
Makes, price.
Yeah, but things have got to change.
Yeah? Yeah.
Just everything is reducing our quality of life. It's penalties all the time.
Well, it's not.
You know,
you're just thinking of your social life. You're not thinking about the air that your kids are breathing, your grandchildren are breathing. You're not thinking about the planet. You're just thinking about your personal...
No.
To make a better planet for the younger generation. That's what we're doing it for.
I think the majority of what I saw is people are just so unwilling to change their lifestyle. Either they make small changes that will make no difference, or they make larger changes that impact their life that they don't want to make. And I think there's always going to be opinions that you don't agree with, but just some that I would consider to be selfish.
I'm 75 now. I retired 10 years ago. And the last 10 years have been the best years of my life. Fully recommend retirement for everyone. Of course, health comes into it a lot. I think we're fairly fortunate that we're both reasonably healthy. Well, this is my toy, 3-litre motorhome. So it's got quite a big engine. It's quite powerful. And probably produces loads of emissions. And I really wouldn't want to give this up. Well, I worked for Mobil Oil as an aircraft refueller at Windhoek Airport. We used to get the jumbos coming in and we'd refuel them and send them off to Europe. This is the change from the global temperature from 1850, where it's been cool, all the way through to the last 20 years, which is a bit scary, really, because it's accelerating.
So what did you think when you learnt all of that?
Well, I just look out the front there and look at a 3-litre diesel motorhome, and I'm not yet feeling guilty about it. I'm still hoping nature will take care of itself. I think Brexit has really shown that you can't push the British public around. When it comes to it, they're bloody minded, and they will do what they want to do. And if you can't persuade people on climate change, then you won't get it. I think it's important people like me are there, because otherwise it would just be, oh, let's go green tomorrow. Doesn't matter about the cost, doesn't matter about people who are actually going to end up starving, jobs are going to disappear. It's not as simple as that.
Tackling climate change means reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This is something you will talk about a lot, and as you've heard already, that involves a whole lot of changes, particularly in industry. That will change patterns of employment, so how we manage those changes in employment is a really important thing.
Britain has a terrible track record of managing deep industrial change in a fair way. Just think of the coal mining communities in the 80s. A just and fair transition is the central challenge of climate policy.
In the northeast, former Army Commando Mark is finding talk of lost jobs hit very close to home.
So my granddad worked in the Rising Sun coal mine, the pit there. You're looking way back in sort of 60s, 70s. When it closed, he always said that there's loads more coal down there. I can't understand why they're closing them. Once you get rid of the mines and the shipyards, so anything with a big business like that, everything else goes around it. Bit like all high streets you're seeing them now have just got betting places and sort of charity shops and things like that, and that's the whole sort of economy just completely falls apart, and there was nothing to replace it. Would the same thing happen if we start changing industry now, which is what we're going to have to do? It's almost, are we going to learn by our mistakes and not sort of just leave them to it and go, well, that's she was done, and which is kind of what happened.
The last of the deep coal mines in the UK closed in 2015, but a number of open cast mines where coal is dug from an open pit continue to operate.
I've been reading this article in the paper, which is about open cast mine down in Durham, and that we still need coal. And they want to open other sites as well for jobs and things like that. You have the other side of the argument, which is sort of saying we can't be digging it up from here because of the environmental impact, and that we've actually already got enough coal stockpiled. It's interesting because there's pros and cons for everything.
Good afternoon. Extinction Rebellion campaigners have blocked the entrance to an open cast coal mine in County Durham, and the opposition plans to expand it.
Hello. And they must be out all the time in all weathers as well. You know what I mean?
So here in the north, our people powered the Industrial Revolution with coal, steel and shipbuilding. I'm also here to honour the future of the children we've brought into this world. For them, we need to stop burning fossil fuels. We're asking you to listen up, to step up. We're calling on you to remember your strengths.
For Mark, concern about the loss of jobs also stems from his own personal experience.
When I left the army, I found it difficult to find a job. I got to the stage where I was sending begging letters and just saying, I will work for free, I just want to get the experience doing this. So struggled big time. And then I got a job with British Gas, and I sort of thought, that's a job for life now. I felt as if I was secure again. And then once you start going down this route of realising that we're going to change the fuels that we use from fossil fuels, and you're not going to have gas boilers anymore, I realised I may be losing my job and I'll have to go find a job again. And it's pretty daunting because I'm actually a lot older now and probably not as employable. It's scary.
Some economists, of whom I'm one, believe that cutting these carbon emissions is going to create new jobs and new industries, refurbishing our homes, investing in different electricity technologies, in new kinds of vehicles, technologies that save resources. Actually, this can lead to a new industrial revolution. Going low carbon, going zero carbon will not stop the economy growing. That is a really important point.
Although experts agree we have to stop using fossil fuels, they're embedded in our lives in ways that can be surprising. 27-year-old postal worker Amy lives in Scarborough with her son Bradley and has a distinctly old-fashioned way of heating her home.
Go on, Mum, you can do it.
Hello.
Hello.
Just a bag of coal, please.
$6.75, please.
Thank you. Like when I first moved out here, I was like, solid fuel? What's solid fuel? I didn't really know because I've always had gas. Violators. But it's not like just central heating where you can just flick a switch and your heating's on, or you can set it on a timer so it's warm when you come home. It's not like that. You have to make the fire yourself. And when you have made the fire, it does get nice and warm, really cosy. Sometimes it's too hot, so you've got the windows open and your fire on. Plus, it lets off loads of dust. I've got white furniture. It's not good. I'm forever dusting. This is not going well, is it? Like, I don't know if this is good for your health as well, like obviously breathing in stuff like that. My son's got asthma now, so is it that's part that's caused it? Who knows? Because he was fine before then, before we moved here. It's difficult. People are so involved in their own lives that they don't think about climate change. And we all do our own little bits, recycling and stuff, but we still like to go on holidays. We still like to travel in our car.
At the Assembly, the process is reaching its midpoint, and the delegates are having to consider changes to our lifestyles that might not be to all of our tastes.
Today, we're going to turn our attention to food, farming and land use.
Food is actually quite an overlooked element of the contribution to climate change. In fact, it's about a fifth of the climate change footprint of the UK is produced by agriculture and the food that we're eating.
There is a general consensus that in order to hit that net zero target by 2050, there is a need to change our diets to eat less beef, less lamb and dairy products.
The delegates are being asked to look at a range of ways to reduce our red meat intake, from labelling to tax increases and targeted bans.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
I don't know, I'm just thinking lots of it seem really, it won't happen. Like this whole question about banning meat, meat will never ever be banned. It will never be banned.
Everybody seems to be concentrating on regulate, tax.
You just said that all the British want to be socialist.
Yes, socialist, communist, not communist, not even socialist, communist.
Okay, so on eating differently, Mark, you eat meat at the moment.
Yeah, well, I am literally your typical. I will have the biggest steak I possibly can, and the whole idea of a small one like that, I want that bigger one. So realistically, if meat is going to be more expensive, I will buy it once a week instead of having a couple of days. So I will buy the more expensive meat. I will still have it. I'll have that once a week. The rest of the time, I'll substitute with other things. And I like meat, but I still think we can do it
happen naturally. Make it happen naturally. I don't see how it's realistic to...
You don't think it's realistic?
No, but it depends on the way we do it. I mean, there's already been a big shift in consumer demand anyway. Like, I'm seeing so many people be more meat-free, so I think it could happen. Like, we could just increase the price of meat and decrease the price of other foods. So I think there are ways to do it that are more realistic.
I don't like the idea of controlling things at all. At all. People need to be themselves.
Yeah, need to have choices.
You need to have choices. You need to be yourself. Lovely British weather.
In Coventry, former banker Folajimi is now a university lecturer in business studies.
How much is it? $6.99. Okay. I grew up in Nigeria. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria. A really busy city, really, really crowded. One of the largest cities in the world. It's crazy. Traffic all the time, loads of people. It's one of those places where you really have to be smart. To survive, you have to be smart. So that shaped me a lot. 8 pounds. Are you sure? Not 6. My view is that, climate change. Oh yeah, it's changing. The evidences are there. Humans, we're like the worst on the planet. We're the ones that cause all the problems, okay? We unbalance things. So do I think we unbalance things? Yes. Do I think we should put it right? Yes. Can I panic and worry? No. Okay, I'm not going to panic and worry because we need to live life normally. We can't go backwards. All right, thank you. I'm from a developing country, so I have different perspective. For example, we don't have electricity a lot of times. So you could have 6 hours a day electricity. This is way different from the British perspective. You're talking to the average person on the street. I promise you they have no clue in terms of like climate change. No, they're thinking of food. How do you bring climate change to someone thinking of food?
So historically, it's rich countries like the UK, like the US,
who have made extensive use of fossil fuels. We've benefited from doing that. So those fossil fuels have driven the economy in the UK. We have become rich on the basis of that, as has other countries of the world. A question you might have in your mind is, why should we deny other countries the right to do the same thing?
The climate change is not like a problem of Africa. Is it a Western problem? Yes. I think for when we have challenges as humans, we innovate ourselves out of issues. So for me, the UK should be leading in that light. It's a business opportunity. It's an opportunity for the UK to innovate.
The first thing to say is that the technology is available. With home heating, we have to go towards energy efficiency. We have to move away from the gas boilers that are in all our homes, or pretty well.
The Assembly is learning about a dazzling range of new innovations to help the UK get to
Everybody's had the taste of this cleaner air. Surely most people would want that for their children and their grandchildren.
It's mid-April, and the coronavirus pandemic has changed everyone's way of life. For Richard, his priorities have become focused on concerns about his health.
Well, it's Friday morning, and this is my first job today, is go and get a blood test. So, here goes.
10 hours today, hooked up to 10 hours today, hooked up to a chemical cocktail. Well, they're pumping. As you can see, hooked up today for 10 hours to a chemical cocktail where they're pumping chemicals into me because I have lung cancer. This is something that's going to be...
Richard's diagnosis is for a stage 2 lung cancer. Despite the risks of coronavirus, his doctors decide to begin treatment immediately.
My big regret, and it's a major regret, is I smoked when I was younger. Cigarettes were so cheap, it was one after the other. And that's affected my health now, and I hate cigarettes now. According to my schedule now, this is day 8. And I've got to take some rather special tablets. So I'll take this one now.
Richard's health and his experience of lockdown has prompted him to re-evaluate his views on climate change.
60% of lung cancers are caused by smoking, which leaves the question, how did the other 40% get it? The obvious answer is, of course, traffic fumes, industrial pollution. As people get used to the health benefits of breathing clean, fresh air, I won't want to go back to the old dirty ways of inhaling traffic fumes, even if you disagree with them. With climate change, you can't argue that clean air would be bad for the future.
I'm becoming more and more convinced we have to do something.
So the Climate Change Assembly has been postponed because obviously we can't all get together in Birmingham.
So I think we're going to be doing it online through an app.
Hello everybody, welcome to weekend 4 of Climate Assembly UK. It's really lovely to see you all again. I'm so sorry that we're not in Birmingham, but thank you so much. Is everybody all right?
Hi, I'm Jimmy.
Hope everyone's well.
Do you want me to start singing or?
Hi, Mark. I'm from Newcastle. I'm busy hiding in my daughter's room at the moment. I've confiscated that for this.
Amy, can we come to you next?
Morning, everybody. I'm Amy.
As the Climate Assembly meets online, many see a link between the behaviour changes brought about by lockdown and their work at the Assembly.
Bad as the virus is, it's given me a bit of hope that we actually can make big changes and that people will be willing to do it.
What we saw with COVID, you know, it was such a change that it did prompt some pretty deep thinking, I think, from some people.
This idea of the lockdown is the way to resolve climate change. No, life cannot be like this at all, at all.
I don't want this to stay like this. It's really hard for everybody. But my husband could never work from home before. Now he can, he gets to see his children more. That's a positive.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tilly and Mark. I think it'd be easy to convince people. I think they'll come on board more. They'll be more open-minded to change.
I mean, this is probably the most damaging economic development this country's known. And I don't know if we can recover from it to achieve the goals that we want with climate change. I don't know.
So we're going to email you a link to your ballot paper, and voting is going to stay open until 6 o'clock. So listen, keep well, everybody.
With just the final ballots left to be cast online, the work of the Assembly draws to a close. The votes will be counted and the results delivered to Parliament.
See you later. Bye.
How do you reduce greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by 2050?
Today, the day that the Climate Assembly reports back to Parliament. A remarkable exercise, this. Today, they told the government their answer.
6 months on from the start of the pandemic, and it's still causing huge disruption to life in the UK and to government business.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Darren Jones. I'm the chair of the Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy Select Committee here in the House of Commons. And I'm delighted to be chairing the launch of the full report of Climate Assembly. And also a special thank you to the Secretary of State, Alex Sharma, who is with us this morning and will be speaking on behalf of the government.
The report contains the Assembly's decisions that will reach into every aspect of our lives. They were in favour of a frequent flyer levy, a ban on heating our homes with fossil fuels like gas and coal, and a phasing out of selling new petrol and diesel SUVs. And although the Assembly said we should reduce how much meat and dairy we eat by up to 40%, they decided this should be done on a voluntary basis.
We've achieved a really balanced and informed report, and it's a brilliant piece of work. The bit that happens next is the uncertain bit. So who's going to pick that report up? Who's going to use it?
The virtual launch will give Sue and Mark the opportunity to address MPs and government ministers.
And we'll first be speaking with Sue.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sue and I live in Bath. Over the last few months, the UK have proved that they can adapt well to change. Now we just need our governments to lead the way for us all to change.
And thank you very much. Great to hear from Sue this morning. This is the most important issue of our time. On that, I think we are all absolutely agreed. But of course, we know as government that there is much more to do. And the Assembly's report will help to inform our plans. I've asked my officials to look at its recommendations in detail, and all of us must play our part in limiting global temperature rises. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary of State. Right, we're now going to hear from Mark.
Good morning. My one piece of advice to the government and Parliament about reaching net zero is don't be scared, be bold, aim big. People are willing to change if educated properly and given the facts. Thank you.
I think there's a pretty strong realisation now that if government is spending money to support businesses as a way of recovering from COVID, it can kill two birds with one stone.
Build back better has become a real kind of slogan, and all of that is really positive. I think this is about really bringing together the need to rebuild the economy and to decarbonise that economy, and those two things they sit quite well together.
This morning, I had the privilege of launching the report of Climate Assembly UK, The Path to Net Zero.
As the report is delivered to Parliament, there are fears that the COVID-19 crisis could push the net zero target further down the government's agenda.
We've got a lot of big issues facing the country and the world right now, whether it's, COVID is the obvious example. But if we mess up this climate change agenda, then none of that really matters, because the effect it will have on our way of life, the way we live, the way the world operates, will just be unimaginable.
I think it's still a legitimate worry that the COVID crisis has risen right to the top of the pile of priorities. And climate change, along with all the other things that we need to discuss in society, has come down the list somewhat. And I think that uncertainty still remains.
I just hope this whole assembly wasn't a waste of time because of COVID. Just the whole lot goes on the back burner, because whatever way you look at it, it has to be done.
Easy to be cynical about politics, Mark, but this has genuinely changed your life and the way you see the planet, right?
It's opened my eyes just to how big a scale of problem that we actually have got.
Back in Scarborough, Amy's putting into practice some of the things she's learned in the past 6 months.
I feel really proud of myself for taking part in the Climate Assembly, because no one in my family has really done anything like that before. I think as individuals, we need to be doing things in our own home that help with the environment.
It's almost a no-brainer for this to be changed to an air source heat pump.
If climate change just carries on and nothing's done about it, then I'm scared. And I'm especially scared for my children and their children. What if it's too late by then?
In Newcastle, Mark is looking at possible new roles with his employer.
I want to be trained to do the electrical vehicle side of things. We're going to be putting electrical vehicle points everywhere, because everyone's going to be driving an electric vehicle, so it's realistic in the future.
One of them things, we're all new, it's all good.
I am optimistic that there are still going to be jobs out there. They're just going to be new jobs. And the more I've looked into it, I think it's going to be a good thing.
In Bath, Sue has also traded in her car for something greener.
I charge it about twice a week, just when I need it. It's a bit like a massive mobile phone, and instead of making calls, it takes you places. I love it.
She's also chosen to spread her new knowledge by joining the local parish council.
Unobtrusive solar panels.
What are you going to be like on the parish council then?
Pain in the arse, I expect.
I reckon we'll get close to net zero, but like I say, it depends on if everyone's going to cooperate. If they're not, then we're not going to make it.
I think how I feel about climate change now is I really understand the need for change. We need a government to be able to put us on the right path, but they just need to get it sorted, and sooner rather than later.
You and I have seen a lot of reports. The Net Zero UK's contribution to stopping global warming, the Clean Air Strategy 2019, the land use policies for net zero, reducing...
The Assembly itself is over to you now, politicians. You get with business and sort it out.
So I thought, do we really need another report? Oh, yes. Yes, we do. All of those reports, Madam Deputy Speaker, are politicians telling the public what needs to be done. This report, The Path to Net Zero, the Climate Assembly report, is the public telling the politicians what needs to be done, and about time too.
I am optimistic that the government are going to do the things that we've recommended. I just know it can be done. I really genuinely know it can be done, and that's probably what I want to scream more about, just get it done.
Pues ya hemos terminado de ver en exclusiva pues, todos estos fragmentos de este maravilloso documental. Ahora yo espero que os haya gustado tanto como a mí. Como comentaba antes Sergio, ahora también tenemos la oportunidad de vernos con el productor ejecutivo, que va a ser Steve Smith, ¿vale? Pero no escucha. ¿Me escucháis todas? Vale, perfecto. Va a haber traducción simultánea con el inglés. Como veis en vuestras pantallas abajo tenéis una bola del mundo, ¿vale? Que pone interpretación. Ahí tenéis la opción de clicar en español, ¿vale? Y ahí va a estar nuestra compañera María para poder traducirnos la parte que viene ahora, ¿vale? Que va a ser una serie de preguntas que le podremos hacer a Steve Smith. Steve Smith tiene más de 30 años de experiencia, es uno de los directores de televisión más importantes dentro del Reino Unido. Hoy en día es director de la productora Picture Zero, que trabaja uniendo el talento creativo con las expertas en clima para crear contenidos que puedan llegar al público más allá de la burbuja medioambiental. Como habéis visto en este documental, trabajos cercanos. Vale. Hi there. Y que hacen clic, ¿no? Dentro de nuestras mentes. Por eso yo quería abrir un poco este debate. Voy a hacer una pregunta, pero antes avisaros de que podéis dejarnos vuestras preguntas en el chat, ¿vale? Y desde ahí las iremos recogiendo y se las vamos haciendo así, ¿vale? Podéis cambiaros ya al modo de interpretación en español, las que lo necesitéis. Yo le quería preguntar a Steve, hemos visto ya en este documental que las asambleas ciudadanas son una más de las herramientas que tenemos para transformar y acercarnos a esa idea de democracia, ¿no? Que es poder para el pueblo, poder desde el pueblo, ¿no? ¿Cuáles serían otros próximos pasos dentro de esa democracia deliberativa? No sé si tengo que decirlo en inglés o te lo traduzco.
Good afternoon. I think the Citizens' Assembly in the UK showed how powerful it is when you get ordinary citizens to take part in making really complex decisions. And what really fascinated me is in the UK, we feel very divided at the minute. If you think about the Brexit debate that we had, which has split the country in half, I think it's really interesting to see how you can kind of bring people together to solve really complicated problems. So climate change, again, is a really complicated problem that divides many people. And what was really fascinating is seeing how we got people from kind of all sides of the argument to come together and in a very respectful way, debate and discuss what needed to be done and reach a consensus, which I think is incredibly powerful. Sadly, the politicians, the government, haven't really sort of taken the Assembly report and done anything with it. But I think what has happened is that there is a desire to do community level citizens' assemblies. So what we're seeing in the UK is smaller assemblies happening in local communities where local people come together to try and make decisions about what they'll do. And I think that's a really powerful thing to happen at local level.
Muchas gracias. Lo dicho, si tenéis más preguntas, seguid escribiéndolas. I have one question. O sea, le voy a preguntar ¿qué pasó con ese informe? ¿Se llegó a medidas concretas?
Yes, so first of all, I need to make clear that the Assembly was commissioned by Parliament, which is all the MPs rather than the government. And in the UK, we have these things called select committees, which are very powerful committees made up of MPs. And those select committees commissioned the report, and the report went back to those select committees. And the good thing is that all of those select committees have used the information in the report to inform their own departments. So transport, housing, food, all these different departments have kind of taken on board the comments that the report made. And what those select committees have done is they have also fed that back into government. So it's not fair to say that nothing has come from this. A lot has come from the Assembly. A lot of really valuable things have come from it. It's just that the government haven't chosen to implement the recommendations from the Assembly in full. But the views of the people are being used at lots of different levels through government, and are helping give kind of policy decisions some sort of support, because it sort of shows that the public are willing to act in climate change in quite a progressive way.
Okay, there are some questions now. So what can we do as citizens if our governments haven't made solutions to implement the proposals that the assemblies have demanded?
I missed some of that. Is it possible to repeat?
Yeah. What can we do as citizens when the government doesn't listen to the proposals that have been made in the assemblies, in the citizens' assemblies?
I think it's very challenging. I think for me, the way forward is to try and inspire citizens to do things at local community level. I think that's where there is power. In the UK, we have this sort of, we have MPs and Parliament, but we also have local councils. And local councils and councillors, I think, are kind of rooted much more closely in the local communities. And I would encourage people to come together and work at that level, because I think that's where you can get a real traction, real action happening. I think sometimes that's a way of taking direct action that in a way forces the government to do things because it's happening at a local level. The other thing I would just like to say, which I think is really important, that came out of the Assembly, is I don't think there is one solution that fits everything. I think it's really powerful for local communities to find out the climate solutions that will really work in their area. Because we have different places in the UK. We have cities that have certain types of industry. We have rural areas which have farming communities, and the kind of climate solutions that will work locally, I think, will be slightly different in different parts of the country. And so I think trying to bring democracy back to a very local level is really important.
Mm-hmm. And do you think the Citizens' Assembly has had a real impact in the population or in their perception of climate crisis?
Yes, I think the biggest thing that came out of the Assembly for me is the importance of quality education about climate change. Everyone that went through the Climate Assembly said for them the most important thing was knowing the facts about climate change, understanding the scale of the problem, because then when you understand the scale of the problem, you can start thinking about the important solutions. So everyone that went on the Assembly has been really empowered. And one of the biggest recommendations is that all citizens now need to have that same level of high quality education about climate change. And so there's a lot of work that's going on in the UK. Our schools, for example, we're now trying to make sure that climate education is taught across the curriculum in all schools. I think education is so powerful. And of course, it's one of the reasons why XR members have acted the way they have, because they have that education, they have the understanding of the subject, and they know how important it is. And that we've got to find a way of getting that through to everybody, I think.
Thank you. And how do you think the online format has affected the recommendations from the Citizens' Assembly?
Our assembly was the first 3 weekends of it were in person, so people got to meet each other in Birmingham, and that was very powerful. But I think in a way, having the assembly interrupted by COVID was also very helpful, because suddenly our lives were disrupted, and I think people saw that we can do things differently. So going online and doing the last half of the assembly online, I don't think kind of interrupted or interfered with anything. I think it allowed them to carry on doing their work, but it also allowed them to see how we can do things differently. You know, we don't always have to travel long distances on planes, because we can meet over Zoom like we are today. And, you know, that's something that's going to help solve climate change, isn't it? If we don't have to travel in the same way that we used to. So I don't think having it online was a disaster. I do think it's great when people can meet in person. And I think the good thing that happened in the UK was that the assembly started in person, so everyone got to know each other. So when it moved online, I think they already had a relationship. I think it might be more challenging for other assemblies if they're just done online, because I think you never really get to sort of to know people. For me, one of the most powerful things about the assembly was the lunch breaks and the tea breaks. So in between the sessions, where people could mingle and chat informally. I do want to say one thing that I think is really interesting, and I've said this to XR members in the UK. You know, XR are obviously calling for net zero to be much earlier than politicians, and are wanting solutions to happen much more quickly. And XR are also very supportive of citizens' assemblies. The problem with citizens' assemblies is you will always get a consensus in the middle, because you have people from the extreme left, you have people from the extreme right, and they come together to try and get consensus. So I think there's a danger that deliberative democracies don't deliver the kind of fast change that people want. They actually deliver a compromise of change, because that's what happens. But I think that's the whole thing that happens with democracy, isn't it? You know, I often say to XR, when you say you want deliberative democracy, kind of go, actually, you don't really. You want a benign dictator that can just come and tell you what we have to do really quickly to change things. Because, you know, so for me, that's one of the frustrations of it. It's quite a slow process. And I think change coming out of citizens' assemblies will be quite slow, but that doesn't diminish the power of them. They are really powerful and brilliant things to do.
Thank you very much. So we have one last question. So it is a tricky one. It's a bit difficult. ¿Me lo traduces tú? Basta la conciencia para poner por encima los intereses de cómo solventar la crisis climática, por encima de las dinámicas económicas que tenemos hasta ahora, porque son muy contrarias, digamos, ¿no?
I guess it's whether you feel you want these things to be peaceful, because, you know, I think we're talking about it requiring a revolution, aren't we? Because, you know, clearly the economic model that we have doesn't work for the climate. I think it's why it's so important for the role of the media to change, because if you think about the media, we still kind of portray images on our screens that support a high carbon lifestyle, and that is continually pumped out to audiences all around the world. So I think the role of the media is so important, and I think it's why I would really encourage story makers and filmmakers to start telling new stories about what a future could look like. I think we have to inspire people to make people think that a future could be positive. I think all too often when we talk about climate change, it's apocalyptic, and that can be very depressing, and I think it can put people off changing. I think storytellers and filmmakers need to be able to show how the future could be better and fairer for everyone, and that will mean tackling our economic system. Sadly, I can't see this being a fast process, and it's a pity that the media didn't start doing this 10 years ago, 30 years ago. In the UK, there is some good news in that our broadcasters in the UK have signed up to something called the Climate Content Pledge. So broadcasters are trying to make a commitment to start telling about climate change and climate solutions in a positive way on screen. And I think that will help inspire change. But of course, it is a really slow process. And whilst I share all the frustrations about COP26 and how slow that was and how watered down some of the solutions were, I think we do have to take some comfort from the fact that prior to that, we were heading for a 4-degree warmer world, and we're now heading for a 2.6-degree warmer world. It's not good enough, and we have to move faster, but we have made some progress. And I think what we'll see is progress will hopefully, the momentum will build and progress will happen quicker in the coming years. It has to.
Okay, just one last question and we close it. So, okay. Participants resumed. Do you think that we are warmer?
So say again. Are we?
As one participant in the screenshot resumed. Do you think that we are warmer?
We are warmer. The world.
I don't totally get
Absolutely.
it.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, we can see what's going on in the world all around us. I mean, it's, you know, we know we're warmer. I don't know whether any of you have seen a brilliant thing called Show Your Stripes. It's a way of visualizing how hot the world is getting, which I think is very powerful. There's a website called showyourstripes.info. I think that's good. But yeah, you know, it's clear the world's getting warmer, but wherever we are, I mean, in the UK, we've just had 2 really bad storms. One of the storms has created havoc by putting whole communities without power for over a week. And, you know, in America, we're seeing tornadoes hitting, you know, all around the world, we are seeing the impacts of climate change happening right now. And I'm sure in Spain, you are also having these terrible impacts. So in a good way, citizens can actually see what's happening, can't they? And I think as these things get kind of more extreme, hopefully that will inspire people to get angrier with their politicians and demand change from their politicians. I feel it's such a tragedy that the media didn't help warn people more clearly over the last few years. I think the media have a lot of blame at their hands for not helping people with climate change in the past. I think that's a big problem.
And out of curiosity, has the concept of degrowth been told in the assembly or not?
Yes, I think it was. I mean, I don't think it was told in a sort of really radical way, but I think the assembly did talk a lot about how growth and this kind of constant obsession with growth is unsustainable, And so assembly members did start thinking about the fact that we can't keep growing our economy in the same way, and we have to find a way of doing things differently. Certainly, there was a lot of conversation around how we consume as consumers, and and the need to bring kind of things like sharing libraries where you can borrow things so you don't all have to own the same thing, particularly in relation to some of the gardening and DIY and stuff like that, that we don't always need to own tools. How we can kind of license equipment like cookers and dishwashers and fridges, so that we don't necessarily own them, that we kind of, so at the end of their life cycle, they can kind of go back and be repaired and go to somebody else. So that was talked about, but perhaps not in the way that XR might talk about it.
Thank you. Creo que hay muchas preguntas todavía sin responder, pero...
It's good, I'm happy to carry on.
No sé cómo vamos de tiempo o si quiere responder. Pregunto a Sergio.
Sí, creo que acaba de decir Steve que adelante, que seguimos. Si la gente todavía tiene preguntas.
Vale, perfecto.
Yeah.
So, could we connect things such as the minimum wage with the Citizens' Assembly? Has it been debated there?
I don't think that was debated at the UK Citizen Assembly, but I think Scotland also did their own Citizens' Assembly. So I think they talked about some of those things in Scotland, which I think is good. But again, one of the overriding thoughts at the Assembly was the need for us to be fair in the way we deal with climate solutions, and fairness was at the heart of everything. So there was a lot of conversations around things like frequent flying levies and taxes on flying, so that it balanced things out, so that poorer people were supported to be able to, poor people weren't penalized. But so I think fairness is at the heart of what was discussed.
And as regarding the local action, would you suggest multiplicating or replicating Citizens' Assembly in a more local scale?
Yes, I would. I think it's very powerful to do this.
And I have this question. So there's an extended idea about how fighting against climate change drives to equal anxiety and lowering the birth rate. How do we face those ideas?
I missed that. I think first of all, you were talking about having more local citizens' assemblies. I think they're really powerful. One of the things that we're going to do with our film is from next year, we're going to make our film available as an education tool. So it'll be used in schools and colleges and also communities, where we can show people the film and then have like a mini citizens' assembly after the film to get people talking about these things. So I think that's really powerful. One thing I would say, I don't know whether you're aware of it, but there is a global assembly that's happening as well, which is brilliant. So some of the people that were involved in the UK Assembly have sort of set up a global assembly, and they've got a fantastic website where you can download tools to do your own community assembly. And then at the end of it, you can feed back your results to the global assembly, which I think is a really powerful way of bringing the world together. And then you were asking a question. What was the other question?
How do we face equal anxiety?
Oh, birth rate.
Yeah.
About population.
Oh yeah, like there is a very recurrent idea on yeah, what we need to do is to lower birth rates in order to
I think that's really challenging because
¿O limpias? En serio que te voy a cerrar esto. ¿O limpias media hora o a ver qué pasa?
I think it's really challenging, the birth rate thing, because there is a danger that we in the developed world kind of start accusing people in the global south of having too many children. And I think there are really complex decisions there. I mean, yes, so that's really complex. I think what's important is education. And I think particularly making sure in the global south that people are educated, that girls are supported to have education, can go to schools. And you know, what I think people find is that the more empowered, particularly women and girls are, they're able to then make up their own decisions about sort of whether or not they want children. And I think that's what should be supported.
What would you recommend us to do as civil society to have these assemblies on the media agenda?
It's very challenging. I mean, even in the UK, we didn't have as much media coverage about the assembly as I would have liked. I think you know, the media are very frightened, I think, of climate change. They think it's a subject that viewers and audiences don't really understand or don't like and switch off from. So it's a very slow process. I think we just have to try and encourage storytellers to try and tell more stories and try and get more of this stuff on TV. But what I would also say is that the people that went through the assembly came out fundamentally changed, and I think they have a really powerful story to tell. So I would love to sort of someone to do a film on the people in Spain doing the Spanish assembly to see how they change.
There's one comment that, yeah, indeed we need that change, that shift with more deliberative democracy, but how to deal with that, and also with justice in the global south, because their situation is maybe quite the opposite or just so different, and how to deal with that with justice. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a way we have to remember how much things have changed in the last couple of years. You know, I've been thinking about this for well over 10 years, and the progress was really slow. But I think, you know, for me, I'm just amazed at how many young people are so passionate about this. And I think young people, you know, striking Fridays for Future, how young people from across the world, from the global south, are coming together. And I think really what we need to do is we need to be supporting the next generation and young people, supporting them when they go on strike, supporting them when they protest. I think making sure that everyone hears what they have to say. And again, you know, I think one of the powerful things that came from COP26 was hearing these people from the global south talking about their nations and how vulnerable their nations were. I think it was really important. I've just also, so that you know, I've put in the chat a link to the website for the Global Assembly, globalassembly.org. I would really recommend that people have a look at that website because there's a brilliant toolkit on it where you can download, and it shows you how to organize your own community assembly. And I think that could be something that people could do in Spain very easily.
Okay. Dos últimas preguntas, just two last questions and close. So, do you think like a larger process, like more sessions in the citizen assembly would have led to conclusions that are closer to the scientific reports and their recommendations? And second one, and we finished, how did you come up with the idea? Did you know any other assemblies that inspired you to do this documentary?
Yeah, I don't think having a longer assembly would have made any difference. Of course, the important thing is the question you ask people at an assembly, isn't it? And so, you know, this particularly the UK Assembly asked the question, how do we get to net zero in a fair way? You know, how do we solve climate change in a way that's fair? So fairness was at the center of what they were doing. On one level, whilst I really support citizens' assemblies, I kind of think we're sort of running out of time to have lots of citizens' assemblies because they're quite a long process. You know, the UK Assembly took 1.5 years to sort of organise, because if you're going to do them well, they take a long time to organise. And of course, you know, do we have 1.5 years to make more recommendations? Because the truth is, we know what needs to be done. We know what needs to be done. The complicated thing is how we do it, isn't it? So we know we have to reduce emissions. We know we have to halve global emissions in the next decade. The question, of course, is how do we do that? And that's where I think getting citizens to come together at community levels to work out how they can do this in their own area is really good. As for how we came up with the idea, I was aware that in Ireland, they had very effective citizens' assemblies to deal with the issues of gay marriage and also abortion. And those were very effective ways of solving big problems for the Irish government. So when I read that the UK had commissioned a citizens' assembly for climate change, I just thought it was a really important story to tell. And we managed to get exclusive access to it. And it's something that I felt really passionate about. Frustratingly, we couldn't get it commissioned by one of our broadcasters, so we had to fundraise independently to get the money to make the film. And then having made the film, we were then able to get the BBC to show it, which was really good because you know, they turned it down originally. So it was good news that we managed to eventually get it onto the BBC.
Okay, thank you so much. People here are very grateful that you have come up, and so the word is on Sergio.
Brilliant. Can I just thank everyone and to wish you in Spain good luck with the assembly that you're doing in Spain, and I do hope that there is a way of getting the news of that out to the whole of the Spanish people, because it's such a valuable thing. And also just to say, if you want to watch the whole documentary, it is available on Vimeo with Spanish subtitles. So if anybody wants to watch the whole film, then it is there. And I hope there's a way that, you know, we can all work together in the future as well, because that's what's needed. The world has to come together and work together to solve this problem. So, you know, although we've had Brexit in the UK, many people in the UK, you know, want to be able to carry on working with Spain and other countries in Europe to solve this problem.
Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Steve. De verdad es una auténtica suerte tenerte aquí para que hayas respondido todas las preguntas, por habernos permitido ver el documental. Y gracias, en primer lugar, también a todas las compañeras que han participado hoy y que han dedicado su tiempo y su energía. Empiezo por el final, empiezo por Mari, como intérprete, que ha hecho un trabajo excelente para quienes no dominabais el inglés. Gracias también a Jorge, que ha sido un maravilloso entrevistador. Gracias a Vero por explicarnos las asambleas ciudadanas, porque todavía estamos aprendiendo y lo aprendemos entre todas y todos. Gracias a Miguel por el trabajo también que ha hecho y por explicarnos también a través del vídeo y todo lo importante que es recuperar y ganar la democracia. Y en eso estamos. Había una pregunta de Ágata, curiosamente, que además me sirve para enlazarlo ya con el final, que sobre si hay algún tipo de documental o algún tipo de material audiovisual sobre la Asamblea Ciudadana francesa. Bueno, no os quiero hacer spoilers, pero bueno, este es el primer evento de muchos.
There is one somewhere. I have seen it, but I don't know where you can find it. If you Google.
Sí, efectivamente. Gracias, Steve, por eso. Y de hecho, te animamos también encarecidamente que si quieres el día de mañana trabajar en un documental para España, nosotras encantadas del día de mañana que pueda haber uno, porque creemos también que es una herramienta utilísima, ¿no?, para sacar la Asamblea Ciudadana de la burbuja ecologista que muchas veces nos vemos envueltas, ¿no? Y de lo que se trata es de poder llegar a más gente, de poder democratizar las soluciones a la crisis climática y de que todas las personas podamos vernos involucradas en algo que nos afecta a todas. Y efectivamente, pues voy a terminar compartiendo un pequeño vídeo que ya... Sí,
I would love to do that. I think the challenge is finding the way of raising the money to do it, which is always the thing.
Maravilloso. Voy a terminar compartiendo un vídeo muy cortito de 3 minutos y ya con esto nos despedimos. Nos volveremos a ver muy pronto, habrá nuevos eventos, habrá más acciones, pero bueno, creo que ya esto adelanta un pequeño spoiler de qué va a ir el siguiente Videoforum que vamos a organizar, así que comparto en un momentito pantalla para que lo podamos ver. Y... acción.
En 2020, ce qu'on appelle encore la démocratie, ça ressemble à ça.
Toutes les décisions publiques seront désormais arbitrées en intégrant leurs coûts pour le climat.
Voter pour des candidats qui doivent nous faire des promesses.
It's okay. It's fine. I can probably.
Et encore des promesses.
Et je réconcilierai, car je veux l'unité de notre peuple.
Pour qu'on ait envie de voter pour eux.
Vous m'avez porté au second tour de l'élection présidentielle.
Entre 2 élections, n'avoir presque aucun pouvoir.
Et regarder la politique se faire sans nous, à la télé.
Vous avez annoncé le déclenchement de l'article 49.3
sur le projet de loi instituant un système universel de retraite.
On sait tout ça, pas vrai?
Il y a un an, je ne m'intéressais pas à la politique.
Certains d'entre nous ne croyaient même pas au réchauffement climatique. Je me sentais pas du tout légitime pour prendre la parole. Je n'avais pas du tout confiance. Un peu comme vous, j'imagine.
Il y a 18 mois, en pleine mobilisation des Gilets jaunes et des marches pour le climat.
Alors que l'affaire du siècle avait réuni plus de 2 millions de personnes pour attaquer l'État en justice.
Un collectif a proposé de créer
une assemblée citoyenne.
Des femmes et des hommes, comme vous et moi, tirés au sort.
Qui n'ont pas besoin de faire des promesses pour être réélus encore et encore.
Après des semaines de négociations, le président a accepté de la mettre en place. Une première en France.
Sur un sujet bien particulier.
Sans doute la plus grande menace que l'humanité ait jamais affrontée.
Le dérèglement climatique. Une menace bien pire encore que celle que nous venons de traverser.
Et voilà ce qu'il a dit.
Ce qui sortira de cette convention, je m'y engage, sera soumis sans filtre, soit au vote du Parlement, soit référendum, soit application réglementaire directe.
Pendant 9 mois, on a bossé comme des fous, les soirs, les week-ends.
On a auditionné des scientifiques, des économistes,
des banquiers,
des agriculteurs, des juristes, des syndicalistes, des urbanistes, des chefs d'entreprise, des ministres. On a construit un plan pour éviter la catastrophe climatique et sociale, mais aussi pour que notre futur à tous soit plus beau.
On a cherché des solutions qui respecteraient tout le monde.
Et d'abord les plus pauvres, les plus fragiles.
Des solutions pour relancer l'économie, sans mettre la planète en danger. On sait que c'est pas gagné d'avance.
Mais si ça marche, ça sera historique.
9 mois plus tard, les citoyens ont fait le job. Et maintenant, c'est au président de tenir sa parole.
Ça étonne peut-être, ça en contrarie d'autres, ça faisait peut-être longtemps que c'était pas arrivé, mais je fais ce que j'ai dit.
Alors pour eux, pour nous, pour les Français...
Maintenant, c'est à votre tour, Monsieur le Président.
De tenir votre engagement, comme nous avons tenu le nôtre.
Vous l'avez dit.
Plusieurs fois. Maintenant, faites-le. Les décisions à prendre engagent notre avenir à tous.
Nous devons tous participer à les prendre. Faites-le.
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 Ce sera un moment historique.
La chance de construire le monde d'après.
Et d'inspirer d'autres pays en Europe.
Faites-le.
Faites-le. C'est notre responsabilité face à l'histoire.
Le mouvement citoyen ne s'arrêtera pas.
Il s'agit juste de savoir
si on continue comme avant ou pas.
Partagez cette vidéo autant que vous pourrez.
C'est le moment de réinventer notre démocratie.
Si nous atteignons plusieurs millions de personnes,
ce message ne pourra plus être ignoré.
Alors partageons autour de nous.
Pues muchas gracias a todas y lo dejamos aquí. Gracias por haber venido. y por haber sido protagonistas de este pequeño encuentro. Muchas gracias.